Hello and welcome to the Kill a Bit of Time podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit about self-improvement, as always, and then we're going to be talking about someone called Django Reinhardt, Gypsy Jazz, the origin of the banjo, and we're going to touch on the Nazis slightly. They always seem to pop up from time to time, you know how it is. And then if we got time, we're going to be doing a feature about In the Garden, where I'm going to be talking about stuff that's inspired me from In the Garden. So all that to look forward to and more. So sit back, relax and enjoy my ramblings on episode 7. So here we are, episode 7. Thanks for listening. We're going to start today with a little bit about self-improvement, but I do want to move away from just talking about abstaining from alcohol a little bit at some point, because there's so many other areas of self-improvement out there, and I sort of want to stop focusing on that and allowing that to sort of define me in a way. Sort of like, how are you? Nice to meet you. Yeah, I haven't drank alcohol in nearly 50 days. Why am I need to sort of, I feel like I need to stop counting. Like I've got a little notes thing on my phone where I tot up the days, and I'm nearly on day 50. But I'm just thinking, surely I'm not going to keep doing this into the thousands. And why am I allowing that to define me as well? In a way, it's still alcohol defining what I'm doing, because I'm saying I'm not doing something. Why don't I talk about the stuff that I am doing rather than the things that I'm not doing? Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to try and focus on not counting those days up anymore. I think as soon as I get to 50 days, I'm just going to not count anymore. And as well as that, stop trying to let what I'm not doing define me. It's like, well, after you give up smoking for a few years, you don't include that as part of your identity, do you? When you meet new people, you don't go, right, mate, yeah, how are you? Yeah. So what do you do? Well, I haven't smoked in 2 years. Oh, right. That's not really who you are, is it? What you don't do. I need to concentrate on what I do, I think, and just concentrate on that. But it's easy to say I don't smoke because it's not something that you can dip in and out of. It's not something you can just casually do at the weekends. I know some people do it socially, but I think that's a rare phenomenon. So you're less likely to find people who say I don't drink, because even if people drink once a month, once every 6 months, they still class themselves as drinkers. So to say I don't drink is quite a bold statement, I think. And am I ready to say I don't drink? I'm not sure. I don't want to drink today. And I was invited to the pub the other day, but I was looking after my daughter. And what I have found, actually, the longer I've abstained for, is I actually genuinely are losing a bit of interest for it. Like I was invited to the pub and I was like, no, I'm looking after my little girl. Not only would it be irresponsible of me just to go to the pub and drink whilst I'm looking after my little girl, but I actually would prefer to stay in and look after my little girl. That's more enjoyable. It feels like I was more interested in doing that anyway. And I was like, that's quite nice that I've sort of losing interest in a bit, sort of miss it less as it goes on. But am I ready to say I don't drink at all? I'm not sure. Because I've got this bottle of gin, this spiced rum that I made in my cupboard. It was originally for my sister's Christmas present, but obviously she wasn't there that Christmas, so it's just been sitting in my cupboard, awaiting her return. And I always thought, when she gets back, we'll drink that bottle of gin. And I was sort of looking forward to cracking it open. Not gin, sorry, rum, spiced rum. And do I want to miss out on that? I don't know. Would it be missing out? I don't know. I can only know when I come up to that day, because that day is not today. Today, I'm not drinking that fucking spiced rum. My sister ain't here, and I don't want it. But when that day comes, if I feel like having it, then I will. I'm not going to tie myself down with these psychological prisons, but I do want to focus on the benefits of abstaining from alcohol and not letting that be a sort of like chronic habit. I've got a mate who put it quite nicely, who he says, I've never subscribed to sobriety, and he doesn't drink anymore, and he just smokes weed and uses weed oil and things like that. And he said, I've never subscribed to sobriety. I just don't want to drink. So I think it's there's many facets to it. It's not just it's not black and white. There is a lot of grey area to it as well. But no, the weed thing is not for me. It's not for me. I haven't smoked weed in years. I've tried weed oil before, and I wasn't really a fan of that either. It's very easy to have too much. You'd think it hasn't kicked in because it's been an hour, and sometimes it takes about 2 hours to kick in. And one time I had about 2 teaspoons of it, and I just had to go to bed. When it started kicking in, I had to go straight to bed, and then I was just comatose. And when I woke up in the morning, I was still trolleyed, and I was questioning my ability to drive and that was about 12 hours later. So ever since then, I was like, nah, weed oil, it's not for me. But this fella, my mate, he said, I've never subscribed to sobriety. And I thought that's quite interesting because I was trying to reflect that onto myself. Have I? At the moment, yes. But is that going to be a long-term subscription? Is that going to be an annual repayment plan? Well, only time can tell at the moment. I don't really feel like I'm missing out on anything. I think the main thing, if you do feel like you're missing out on something, it's the ceremonial aspect of it. My mate, who's kicked everything because of substance abuse, recently said the only time he gets an urge to go back to it is when he's walking down the street and he can hear people having barbecues and having a good old knees up. And that's the only time he sort of misses it. So I think one of the main draws is that ceremonial aspect to it. Also filling out time as well, having hobbies as well to fill out the time where you were just getting off your tits all the time. So my mate, he said he's tried to find hobbies to fill the time because he's kicked cocaine use and alcohol. He's gone full sober after a short stint in rehab, and he's been trying to find hobbies to distract himself. He tried to get a Nintendo Switch, right? Paid like 230 quid for that. Didn't work. He said to get bored of it straight away. I can imagine that as well. So, as soon as I had a kid, actually, that was my gamer days gone. I didn't realise it was going to happen. They are gone. To even think that I'd have a spare hour to play Xbox 360 now is absolutely laughable. As if I was so delusional to think I would have spare time to play Xbox is absolutely mental. The only reason I'm able to record this podcast is because I managed to scratch together a bit of time on my split shift when I'm at work. I'm at work this morning. I come home, I record a podcast, and then I go back to work in the evening. I'm literally squeezing it in. So to think I had time to play Xbox there's no way. But anyway, you got this Nintendo Switch that didn't work. Got bored of that, and I think he tried getting into doing some drawing because he's always good at art. But I'm not sure he got into that again. Because it takes a lot of motivation. It takes a lot. You got to put your heart on the line when you're doing art and music because you got to be ready to create shit and just go, that's all right. You got to be willing to potentially waste your time on something that's no good, and you got to be able to not afraid to fail. And it takes a lot of courage to sort of be willing to put your sort of your heart on the line to try and produce something meaningful. And it's just to look back on it and go, oh, actually, that's a pile of shit. You got to sort of be ready for that. But every now and then you create something that you're really proud of, and it all makes it worthwhile. But anyway, I don't think he got into the drawing aspect. And then what he did get drawn to in the end, which I thought was quite surprising, was smoking meats. He bought a meat smoker. And as far as I can tell, you just get various meats and then this wood stuff, like apple wood or something. You chuck it in the side and light it, and it sort of sucks the smoke in, and it gives the meat a smoky flavour. I think you just stand next to it watching your meat smoke for hours on end. I don't know, not my cup of tea, but if it works for him, it works for him at the end of the day. But I'm lucky enough already to have hobbies. I've just encountered more time to do them, and music's my main hobby. I like to play the banjo more than anything recently. I've really got into that recently. It's just fun. It sounds cool. I love the banjo. I think it's a great instrument. It's more interested in guitar in a lot of ways. Guitar, everyone plays the guitar. Who plays the banjo? Not that matters. But I do find, since having my stint of sobriety, that I've got way more motivation, way more energy, and way less fear of failing when I approach doing these activities, and I'm enjoying it a lot more. So all my sort of hobbies are music related. I did go through a little stint of photography, That was quite fun. I'm still in that, actually. I've got a camera, a Nikon D3000, whatever it's called. And I had a little obsessional period of purchasing lenses through Marketplace, different various types of lenses. It's well good when you get into it. There's all sorts of lenses. But now I've got about 6 or 7 lenses. I'm sort of losing a little bit of enthusiasm for it. I always tend to go through these obsessions, but that's in another feature later. But what I love about the photography is it gives you a reason to go out, even if you go into the same place that you've been to 100 times. If you go with your camera, you've got an opportunity to capture something that may have not been there before. So it's like it gives you another reason to go out and explore, which is really cool. And I still do that now, to be fair. Whenever I go to somewhere beautiful, some sort of natural area, I always take my camera with me. I love it. It's great. But it's all about having the motivation to go out and the reason to just get up and do it as well. And I can relate to people when they say they've been depressed, because I had a stint of depression in my early 20s. And it was when I've been partying it up big time in Northampton, going to raves all the time, getting off my tits every weekend without fail. Sometimes just going a full week, just still on it. And it all came sort of crashing down, reality, towards the end of these years of doing that. And I moved that back down with my parents because I really wanted to pass my driving test. And I moved into doing full-time work at Wetherspoons, which isn't the most, soul-filling work in the world. And I just became depressed. And I didn't even realise as I was getting depressed. It's not like a switch that happens in your head. It's not like you suddenly wake up one day depressed. It's sort of a gradual process. And as it was happening, I didn't realise it was happening until I was already in a depressed state. And you sort of like, you don't want to go out, and you're reading on the internet, how can I cure depression or whatever? And it says, oh, go out for a walk in nature and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, but the problem is when you're depressed, you don't want to go out for a walk in nature. It's that little spark of doing it in the first place. You don't want to go for a walk. You don't want to pick up an instrument. You don't want to eat sometimes. All you want to do is lie there and and it's not helping, but you just can't physically do anything else to help yourself. It's bizarre. And you sort of always putting on a fake smile, and you can go to work and you can act normal all day long. You'll be surprised at what a good actor you can be when you become depressed, because you know how everyone's expecting you to act, and you just do that. So it's always in the background as well. And the thing that highlights depression is you can go out, you can do normal things. You can go to work and you can pull a pint and you can clear a table and you can have a conversation with someone, even though you want it to be short-lived as possible. But there's no chance of you picking up an instrument, mate. That little bit of creative spark in you, that is dead. If you're depressed, there's nothing in you that wants to pick up an instrument up, not in the slightest. But what got me out of that slump was going travelling to Australia, and it didn't cure it straight away, but it was like that push of real independence where I was just out on my own that I think I needed, and it took a while to get over my existential worries that I had in life and sort of like mature slowly, I suppose, and still changing and developing and growing even to this day. I don't think you ever stop doing that, really. Look at Ozzy Osbourne. He said he stopped doing painkillers for his final performance because he said he'd rather be in the moment and feel the pain for his last performance on stage rather than it be numb. But I used to, when I was going through that little depressive stage, I used to use alcohol to sort of give myself fake inspiration, because once you've had a few beers, you think you've got it in you to maybe play a bit of an instrument, but it's all fake. That sort of motivation there and that creativity, it's sort of fake in a way. So it's just, that doesn't solve it either. So I was just drinking to sort of solve the problem, but it wasn't really. It was just covering it up. But also it comes down to who you doing it for, who you being creative for. Like, who am I doing this podcast for? I'm doing it for myself, really, to learn something. I'm interested in putting out podcasts. I'm reaching out to people. I'm saying hello. How are you? You know what I mean? And what it's not about is counting up how many views you got, how many downloads you've got. And I do keep falling into that little trap of having a look. But I've decided to stop counting things like that. I'm going to stop counting up how many sober days I've had. I'm going to stop counting up how many views I've had. I'm also going to stop counting the episodes as well. I've noticed I keep doing the number in the intro. Episode 5, episode 6. I'm just going to stop that as well, I think. I'm just going to try and cut out all counting, see where it gets me. Counting seems to be no good for me right now. But anyway, sometimes adversity can help you as well. Like for me, I lost a finger, right? I was in New Zealand and I was in a car accident and someone was driving. I was in the passenger seat and they were going around, I think they were going too fast on this gravel track on a mountain somewhere near Rotorua in New Zealand. Anyway, the back end skidded out. The windows were open. I was in the passenger seat. I grabbed hold of the door, with my fingers going to the outside of the car because the window was open. So I grabbed hold of the door and then the car rolled. And as the car rolled, my little finger got crushed. And as a result, the injury was that severe that they had to amputate. And, I wasn't as miffed about it as you would have perhaps thought, because you think it could have been a lot worse. It could have been my whole hand. Think how lucky I am. It could have been my life. You know what I mean? If we went off the other side of the road, we would have gone off a fucking mountain edge. So I was just counting my blessings in that situation. Also, you get used to it very quickly, not having a finger. The only things I miss about not having my left finger is scratching my ear, inside my ear, because I scratch inside my ears with my little fingers. I didn't realise that until I lost one. Also, playing guitar. Obviously, you use your little finger on your left hand for playing chords and things like that. So that made things a little bit more tricky for me. But it never got me down about it. I never let that be a reason not to pick up a guitar, ever. It never got me to that state where I was like, I'm not going to bother then. If anything, it made me more determined. I was like, I'm not going to let that fucking beat me because I've got one less finger. No chance. That's not going to stand in my way. And it led me to carry on doing it. I usually do singing and songwriting on guitar. Usually make tunes up about my mates from back in Silverstone and stuff like that, and people I work with. I might flag a few up on this podcast at some point. And but it's also led me to learning the banjo, because with a banjo, a lot of the work is on the left hand because you have these little ring picks on and you have to learn these rolls, they're called, and you do these patterns over and over again. And a lot of the action's on the right hand, and the left hand does a little bit less in most cases when you're playing a banjo. So I thought, that's quite interesting. I might be able to excel at that if I try. So I've been learning that. And, I'm not an expert at the damn thing, but I've been learning a bit, and it's helped me come up with a couple of new tunes. Yeah, I'll play a bit now for you. Would you run and climb a tree with me? I think that part of me is gone. Who will I be when I return? Would you hang with me without the gun? Silent as the night brings chaos to my mind. If I don't sleep tonight in my home, next time I'll surely sleep alone. So there it is, and there it is. And so somebody else who's sort of inspired me from the way that they kind of reacted to adversity in terms of music is someone called Django Reinhardt, who's a sort of virtuoso French jazz guitarist. So he's absolutely amazing. If you've ever heard of some of his stuff, look up Minor Swing. It's fucking awesome. But he's a French jazz guitarist. That's what he's best known for. He's born in Belgium, and he had a Romany background. He died from a brain hemorrhage at the young age of 43, and his music became sort of like the standards in what's known today as Gypsy Jazz. And Gypsy Jazz is also known as Sinti Jazz or Gypsy Swing. Yeah, it's sort of like it's a musical idiom that's sort of inspired by the Romany sort of jazz guitarists of that era. But the Romany gypsies have such a rich and diverse history. It's incredible, really. And I think originally they come from like South Asia, or North India, sort of Rajasthan, Pakistan sort of area. And they came in sort of waves, travelled in waves through the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, and sort of travelled to all different parts of Europe, the UK. But for some reason, everyone just casts all gypsies under the same sort of umbrella. And I think it just comes from ignorance at the end of the day. People don't understand. And in the UK today, I don't know why, but in modern day society, in the UK, they just treat all gypsies as like pariahs on like sort of the fringes of society. And I've said it before in a previous podcast, that it's the only sort of socially acceptable form of racism that's still there today. Because where I work on a holiday park, right? And you get a lot of gypsies coming in from time to time, usually around Christmas time. And they're never any trouble, spend a load of money, really friendly, like no different to anyone else. Yeah, everyone's on high alert. Everyone goes, gypsies around, there's gypsies on park. So what? You know what I mean? And everyone's sort of looking for them, like all a little bit on edge. And it's just integrated sort of racism, really, at the end of the day, in society, isn't it? It's just racism. But other than being just a bit louder than everyone else, they're no different to your fucking next door neighbour. But you can tell. I don't know why. I don't know how. But you can just tell. I don't. It's weird when there's a group of gypsies. You can just tell that they are gypsies. I don't know why. Because individually, if you had a lineup, right, it's lined up a load of people. No one's talking. There's about 6 people in a row. You could. It'd be very difficult to pick out which one's a gypsy. But if you get a group of them together, it's like they're gypsies straight away. It's obvious, and I think it's because they're sort of like wild humans, aren't they? They sort of live in the wild, right? Whereas we're sort of like domesticated in a way. You know what I mean? Like we are owned by the government. The government are our owners. You know what I mean? Like we get our immunisations. We eat what they give us to eat, and we piss where they tell us to piss. Whereas the gypsies, they can just do what we want. It's like I'll put it like this: like if you got 2 cats, right, like same breed, yeah, same diet, same DNA, same everything, apart from one was a house cat and one was like a feral cat. If you put them both in the same room, you could tell which one's which. You know what I mean? I think it must be like that. But I think that's why so many people are depressed at the minute as well, because we're not meant to have owners like that. We're meant to be free, like the gypsies, but we're not. We're sort of like owned in this really weird structure of society where we're sort of led to believe that the only way to get along in life is to get a job, pay your taxes, go home, buy a house, do your shopping, become a consumer. That's sort of the only option. It's not like you go to school and they go, right, you can join mainstream society, or you can opt out and you can do these other things. You can do this. There's no options. You don't get to opt out. You're never encouraged to opt out. Nobody explains the benefits of opting out. If I could go back in time, I think I would have got a canal boat and been a bit like a gypsy, but on a canal boat, just going around on the rivers and the canals and that. I think that would be my dream. And if all goes tits up in this life, and I ever get the opportunity, I will just buy a canal boat and just float around for the rest of my days. You know what I mean? But in Django Reinhardt's early life, he was just staying around in various sort of Romany encampments around Paris, right? Just doing it, just travelling around, right? So he was a proper gypsy. He wasn't like a fraud. He was real. And that's what they did back in the day. They didn't have like caravans and that like that you have today. They have the proper like wooden carts. You know how you see every now and then on the roundabout where they're selling like little wooden sculptures, or they might sharpen your knives for you or something like that, and the little wooden wagons and that. I think that's what the sort of thing that Django Reinhardt would have lived in. Something like that. It's cool, isn't it? But in his early years, he predominantly played the banjo, which I thought was really cool. He didn't always play guitar; he played banjo, and banjo is also a misinterpreted instrument, right? Because everyone just thinks banjo, and they automatically think hillbilly, don't they? Because of films like Deliverance and things like that. And it's a big misinterpretation because there's so much more to the history of banjo than just some hillbillies hitting in the woods, drinking moonshine, playing fucking banjo. It actually, if you trace it back, the banjo actually had its roots in Africa, specifically Gambia, where they used to stretch an animal skin over like a hollow piece of wood or something, and that created the body. And then they used to make strings out of like plant fibre. They used to make plant fibre strings. And that was the sort of rudimentary first sort of examples of the banjo. And then it didn't reach Ireland, right, until the 1840s. And I always thought that the banjo was in Ireland and then the Irish took it to America. But actually, it was the other way around. The banjo reached America in the 17th century. Because obviously the Americans were big on the slave trade and they were taking slaves. They probably took some slaves from Africa, one of which had a instrument resembling the banjo or whatever. And then it reached America. And then the Americans or the American Irish took it back to Ireland. And that was how the banjo got introduced to Irish folk music. That's an incredible little journey of the banjo, isn't it? It started from Gambia and then it's now in every sort of pub in Ireland you go to, there'll be someone in the corner playing the banjo. There's a fiddle, the banjo, the guitar, a singer, an accordion player. That's usually the little lineup in an Irish pub, and it fits in great. But yeah, so I thought that was quite cool that America introduced the banjo to Ireland during. Actually, the way it was introduced wasn't very nice. It was introduced to Ireland when they were doing the touring minstrel show. I've spoken about minstrel show before, when I was talking about the origins of Morris dancing, which is actually Moorish dancing. And they used to bring the banjo around doing the minstrel show tours, this racist little tour they used to do, where they used to dress up as black people by blacking up with boot polish over their face and used to play a banjo. And that's how it went to Ireland. But yeah, it came from Africa. And now it's just associated with white hillbillies. But anyway, old Django Reinhardt, he played in a band, right, with his dad and his 7 brothers. And he used to just go around busking outside like cafes, outside bars, him and his brothers and his banjo. I think he played a fiddle as well. And yeah, he used to do that. But in 1928, he knocked over a candle, right, in his wagon. And it got engulfed in flames. And he was seriously burnt, like burns over half of his body. Spent 18 months in hospital. His leg got all fucked up. Ever since then, he had to walk with a cane. And his arm and his hand was really badly burnt as well. And his little finger is like really curled up and burnt and disfigured from the fire. And obviously that was his chord hand, just like my chord hand when I lost my finger. His finger was all mashed up. But he didn't let that hold him back at all. Quite the opposite. So he was faced with this adversity and he continued to not only play, well, actually he stopped playing banjo as much and he actually moved on to guitar because it suited him more, because I think there's less distance between the frets, so it was easier for him to dance around the fretboard with his remaining sort of what was left of his hand. But he went on to form a successful quintet with his little brother Joseph and 2 French jazz musicians. And he was taking the world by storm. He was absolutely amazing. He was like a virtuoso on jazz guitar. But at the start of World War II, it became increasingly difficult for Django to continue his music because gypsies were banned from living in cities and they were actually getting forced into settlement camps because obviously French was under German rule, wasn't it? It was occupied France. And for the gypsies, that was an incredibly dangerous place to be. If you were a gypsy and you got caught by the Nazis in France, then they would herd you into these, what was called then, settlement camps, where you'd be routinely sterilised, right? So if you're a bloke, they'd snip your bollocks off or snip you somehow. If you're a woman, they'd sterilise you I don't even want to know how, but horrible. And they used to have this badge system as well. So if you're a gypsy and you got caught in occupied France, they'd put you into a settlement camp and they'd give you a brown triangle to wear so everybody knew you're a gypsy. If you were a convict or a criminal, right, you'd get a green triangle. If you were a Jehovah's Witness, you get a purple triangle. I don't know what their beef was with Jehovah's Witnesses. It's probably just because they're annoying. And if you were homosexual, if you were gay, you'd get a pink triangle, right? And so, yeah, it was all like you were in these little groups wearing badges and stuff. So it was an awful place to be. So obviously Django was trying to stay away from that, but it didn't stop him playing his music. He was still getting it out on radio broadcasts. He was still playing it in pubs and bars where he could get away with it. It was mad. Black triangle, they had black triangles as well. And that's if you were sort of like what they called work shy. And it's if you're an alcoholic, right, or a pacifist or just a vagrant or something like that, you'd have to wear a black triangle. Also, if you were mentally ill, right, or mentally disabled, right, they'd put you into a settlement camp and you had to wear a black triangle, but it used to have the word blood in it, B-L-O-D, with an umlaut over the O, blood, which means stupid. It's just like, sometimes it's like, are they having a laugh? Blood. So it's just a badge saying you're stupid if you're mentally disabled. To be fair, there's a few lads in my kitchen you could do with that badge. But anyway, you can see why Django was getting worried, can't you? You know, getting forced into these camps. And if you were forced into a camp, you were sort of forced into slave labour on farms and factories and things like that. So you're trying to stay well clear of that. But in that adversity, he continued to play, record jazz music. He was the most famous French jazz musician in Europe at that time. But it was getting a bit hairy for him towards the end of the war, when it was getting a bit aggy. His mates were getting caught by Nazis all over the place, or they were joining the French resistance. So it was getting tough. And he even tried to escape a couple of times. And one of the times he tried to escape France, he got caught by this German officer, this Nazi fella. But because the Nazi guy loved jazz music, he let him go because he loved jazz. He was like, he let him go. And this guy's name was Dietrich Schultz-Kohn. So big up Dietrich Schultz-Kohn for letting Django Reinhardt go. Fair play, mate. You know what I mean? So not everyone follows the grain. You can be the odd one. If you see wrongdoings going around you, be like Dietrich. Let him go. But anyway, he went on to tour America after the World War ended, and he played with people in America like Duke Ellington and other jazz musicians. And he sort of spent the rest of his life just playing and enjoying music. He was motivated in the face of adversity, and I find it inspiring. You know, half his body burnt to a crisp, hand permanently deformed, hunted by Nazis, hell-bent on slicing his balls off and committing him to slave labour, and he goes on to be one of the most profoundly talented jazz musicians of his time. Yeah, pretty incredible if you ask me. But anyway, that's the end of my feature. And now we're going to frolic to a feature that I'm going to call In the Garden. In the Garden. In the Garden. So here we are, in the garden. So I've been getting into my gardening recently. It's been quite enjoyable to just enjoy being in the garden, especially with my little girl. So I spend time with her just digging around in the mud. She gets covered in mud. I just have a little dig. You know what I mean? Chuck a few apples over the fence. Because apples, I've got an apple tree in the garden and they keep dropping apples on the floor, which usually don't bother me. But the apples attract wasps. And now I've got a little girl roaming around. I need to keep her away from the wasps. So I keep picking up the apples and just chucking them over the fence. So I spend my time just doing that a lot of the time. And I planted a few plants. It's quite nice, just pottering around in the garden. But garden centres as well. I've been going to a few of those for a little bit of lunch and having a little mooch around. Garden centres can be a bit pricey. So I usually look for like the discounted stuff. Or because I ain't paying like 15 quid for some geraniums that might die. So I just have a little look at the discounted stuff. And I also, my mum taught me this, right? A lot of the plants, if you just pinch a bit off and put it in your pocket, just like a sprig, right? Or a little leaf of a cactus or something, You take it home, put it in some water, and it just grows. So you can just take as much as you want, really. It's not harming anyone. You're just taking a bit off of the plant. You're not stealing like the whole plant. You're just taking a few leaves, and then if they grow at home, it's sort of like fair game, isn't it? You know what I mean? But yeah. Anyway, my mum did this, right? Accidentally, I might add, at a butterfly sanctuary. Nipped a bit of leafage off, took it home, and didn't realise. But when we got home, put it in water. There was fucking butterfly eggs on the leaves. Tropical butterfly eggs. Obviously, that's a big no-no, innit? You can't, obviously accidental. But yeah, so that wasn't very good. But anyway, I've got into doing a bit of that. And every time I'm out and about now, I look at plants and I'm like, can I pinch a bit of that off? But I did grab a load of these little like daisy things. These like really spindly little daisies from the bottom of a lamppost. But then I immediately dropped them and I just thought, how many times has that fucking lamppost been pissed on by a dog? It's definitely been pissed on. I've had dogs in the past, and lampposts is prime time having a piss territory. They will cock that leg up. They're going to piss on that lamppost. They don't even smell it out. They just know there's a good place to piss. So I was like, no. So I've got some good thing about having a baby or a kid is that you always got wet wipes to hand. Always. You never go out of the house without wet wipes. So I cleaned my hands up with that, and I was like, ugh. So I learnt my lesson there. But maybe it was just a bit of karma for nicking all the garden centre stuff, you know what I mean? But one interesting thing that keeps happening in my garden is the bloody, there's brambles, right, on the other side of the fence, and they keep coming through under the fence and coming out the other side. I'm like, you little bastards, they're back again. I keep yanking them out, and they keep coming back. And the other day, I've seen them came through again. I was like, fuckers, they're back again. And I've got some weed spray, right? Because every now and then I get too many weeds on the lawn bit and I spray them down. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. But it feels wrong, actually, to kill a weed. I don't know why, but we do it anyway. But anyway, I've got this weedle, and I thought, right, I'm going to give these brambles a good taste of weedle. Right? Fuck with me, you're going to get some weed spray. So I gave these brambles, these two like shoots of brambles that were coming up from under the fence. They had about 6 leaves on each one. I proper doused them down in some weedle. I thought, right, your days are numbered. Went in, got on with my life. Came out a couple of days later. Went over to check on the work that I'd done. I was expecting shriveled up, dead, sort of brambles, and I was going to sort of bask in my own success. No, nothing. Not even a blemish. I was like, what the fuck? These things, they look healthier than they did before when I left them. I was like, what are these? How are they so invincible? Anyway, I called my mate Liam because he's a gardener, and he knows a lot about plants and stuff like that. And I told him about my trouble with the brambles, and he was like, oh yeah, you'll struggle getting rid of them. Apparently they can. It's not just the blackberries and the seeds in the berries, how they spread through birds and stuff like that. They can spread just from like the ends of their little brambles touching soil again. They can reroot from the ends of their little bramble branches if they touch soil. So they can go over a fence, curl down, touch soil and take root again. I was like, you're mad. That is mad. Why are they so indestructible, little things? And so they do that. And then he told me a funny little story. He said, some people think that brambles are actually carnivorous because the way that their barbs are shaped, it's very easy for woolly animals like goats and sheep and stuff to go into the brambles because the way the brambles are shaped, you can get into them, but then they can't get out because when they go try and get out, that's when they get hooked. And they reckon that they capture these animals with their barbs. The animals die of thirst or starvation or something, and then the nutrients goes into the soil, and the brambles get the benefit of the nutrients, which makes sense in a way as well because they're quite low plants, aren't they? So the trees and stuff, they're gonna beat everything else to the sunlight. The brambles, they might have come up with another little way to get nutrients and stuff like that by just killing little woolly animals, and they attract them over with their berries. Devious little bastards, aren't they? But anyway, There's 583 known species of carnivorous plants out there in the world. So it's not a far cry to think that, there's just one more. But there's a lot of old English folklore surrounding brambles as well. They've got a pretty mad little history. Some people call them the devil's fruit, because obviously you've got raspberries, which are less common, but mainly blackberries on the brambles. And people say it's devil's fruit, because when the devil got thrown out of heaven, he landed in a bramble bush and then spat on it, apparently, and stomped on it. What he was doing in heaven in the first place, I don't know. That's where a lot of religious stories don't make sense to me, because the devil's knocking about everywhere. But anyway, they used to, they also, like in the sort of like pagan type times, they used to pass livestock through little, you know what I was telling you about the brambles when they loop over and they take root again? It causes like an arch sometimes. They call them bramble arches. And they used to pass livestock through it to ward off illnesses. And people used to crawl through them as well sometimes to sort of fend off whooping cough, because whooping cough was big back in the day. But we've come on a long way, really, in a lot of ways. Like, I don't trust the pharmaceutical industry at all. But I'm glad we're sort of not like just crawling through brambles to try and get over our illnesses anymore. I'm glad we're past that stage. But yeah, people used to believe a lot in weird shit back in the day like that, didn't they? It seems like most of the weird folklore stories in England are either based on like Christianity or some sort of like pagan ritual or something like that. But people don't really believe in any of that sort of shit anymore, because they think that they know best. They think that they've got an idea of what's going on in the world, which is weird because we actually don't. If you think about it, we ain't got a clue. Just because we understand it to some degree how to operate in this society, which is relatively unnatural if you think about it, just because we think we've got an established footing and an established understanding about how to navigate this strange society, this bubbled up, this unique kind of society. This hasn't happened. It's only happened in the last few hundred years. When you compare the history of the world, it's quite a strange obscurity. And just because we can navigate that, most people think they've got a good idea about what life's all about, when they actually have no idea whatsoever. Most people think they've got a good idea of what's going on because of what they sort of see in the news. They think they've got a good handle on life because they know there's a fucking hosepipe ban in Yorkshire, or they're sort of loosely following foreign affairs, which are just fueled by political agendas anyway. And they sort of got a loose handle on that, and they go, yeah, I know what life's about. I know what's going on. No, you don't. They sort of like get most of their information from social media, which is just spreading shit around most of the time. In a way, social media is like modern day folklore, because back then they were just crawling around in brambles trying to get over whooping cough. And now a lot of people are just getting like sort of fake medical advice from Google and things that they see popping up on their Facebook feed and things like that. When the chances are it's just bollocks, as fucking usual. But the interesting thing is that everyone's seeing the same bullshit. Like I'm the same. Sometimes I fall in the trap of looking at videos on Facebook and I scroll through, and every now and then something catches my interest, and I'll remember it and I'll tell someone about it at work, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I saw that one," and we'll have a conversation, but because we both saw the same video. And I see that happening a lot. People are having conversations about videos they've seen. They're having conversations about stuff they've seen on Facebook and other social media platforms. So there's no sort of like authentic conversations happening anymore, because they're all based on the same shit that they've both seen already. So what are they discussing? They're just relaying the same fucking information that they both already know. When does their opinion come into things? It's the same with the immunizations that they say are causing children to have autism. And the guy who originally came out with this theory actually got removed from the medical board and things like that, because he was caught out for publishing false statistics and things like that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. In 50 years' time, maybe it'll come out that it is true. But I'm leaning to it being bollocks. But because it's mainly fueled by social media. It's all over social media. You'll see it. Immunizations cause autism and things like that. But why are we allowing ourselves to be fed bullshit through social media, allowing it to become part of what we talk about to people in our day-to-day lives, and letting that sort of manifest in our thoughts and then eventually in our actions as well? We shouldn't really allow that. There's loads of stuff that we sort of just hear about and we just accept it as fact when it's actually just bullshit. You know, like goldfish. Remember the old one where they say goldfish have only got 3-second memory? That's an early one. I remember saying that to people when I was like 14, 13, telling everyone, oh, goldfish only have a 3-second memory. Well, how do you know? How do you know that? How do you know? Unless you're a fish, you don't know that. How can they prove that a fish got a 3-second memory? That's a load of bullshit, but we believed it back in the day. Yeah, there's loads of stuff. There's another one that came out like, I don't know if it's true or not. The only way to prove this one is to test it out, right? And it's apparently if you get 2 plants, right, in 2 different rooms, same plant, same DNA, same everything, right? You water it the same, you give it the same nutrients. Apparently, if you go into one of them, right, and just start giving it some abuse, like saying you're fucking shit, you look rubbish, just give it some negative fucking attitude, right? And the other one, you go in and you go, oh, you look great today. Give it some positive encouragement, right? Compliment it. So its leaves look nice, right? And just say, how are you doing? Have a little chat. Be nice to it, right? Apparently, the one that you're nice to grows a lot healthier than the one that you're giving shit to. So the one that you're giving verbal abuse to apparently suffers in terms of its health, which I don't really buy it, but I've seen it on the internet. And it's just a good example of the sort of shit that's out there. But the only way to tell is to test that one out. So go away and test it. Let me know. So, but yeah, if you see me in my garden just shouting at my brambles, you know why. But yeah, that's my mate told me about that little bramble story, and I thought it was quite interesting. I thought I'd bring it up on this podcast. But well, I did call him. I hadn't spoken to him for a while, right? And I was just a little bit nervous at the start because I was like, I don't want there to be any awkward silences. I don't know why. You sort of have that look when you haven't spoken to someone in a while. You want it to be a nice conversation. You want to enjoy talking to them, and you want them to enjoy talking to you. And sort of the connotations of an awkward silence isn't enjoyable for either party. So you try to avoid them. I was just worried about those bubbling up. But it turns out, yeah, there might be the odd like few seconds every now and then, but you need them every now and then. It's just like signifies a change of topic sometimes. But it got me thinking, it's like, why are silences awkward? Why? What is the reason for that? If I was sitting with him in a pub, wouldn't we just be chatting the whole time? But for some reason, if you're on the phone to someone, you're expected just to talk the whole time through. But if you're in a pub with someone, there's loads of times where you just sit there and have a little look around. You know what I mean? So yeah, but I think part of the reason is because we've been brought up with a lot more sort of noise than there should be. Like if you're in nature, right? If you're in proper nature, what noises are there? You got the sound of the wind in the trees, birds, maybe like little woodland animals snapping twigs as they're walking around. That sort of stuff is largely silent, right? So I think we should feel comfortable in silence because that's the natural state of things. I was stood outside Lidl the other day and I just thought to myself, right, I'm going to stand here and sort of like take in my surroundings. And the first thing I noticed was how fucking noisy it was. There was just never a moment's peace. You had cars going along, you had the sounds of people, electric doors opening and closing, like dogs barking in the distance. There's just never a minute's fucking peace. So it's like we've been accustomed to there just being noise around all the time. And we don't really practice the art of just sitting in silence anymore. We should be able to do that. We should just be able to sit there in silence, but we don't. Even when we're in our own homes, we either put the TV on, right, or some music, or a podcast, or radio, or something, or we feel the need to call someone up and talk. Why don't we just sit in silence for a bit? You know what I mean? It would be a bit weird though if you called your mate up and you're like, right, fancy just sitting there for a bit, just hold your phone to your head in silence. I understand how that would be a bit weird, but when you go camping, you know what I mean. It's nice sometimes. For example, when you go camping, you just sit there and relax and just listen to nature and just enjoy being with other people, but without having to chat shit all the time. So yeah, I can understand how a phone call might be a bit weird in that situation. You right, mate? Yeah, how are you? Yeah, not too bad. And it's just that for 5 minutes. Yeah, well, maybe I'll try it. Maybe it'll be good. I like to keep my phone calls pretty snappy though in general. every now and then I'll call up a mate and have a little like extended chat. But most of the time for me, it's just about sharing information. It's about sharing information quickly. Where are you going to be? What time? What do I need? What's going on? Tell me. Let's share this information and wrap this up as quick as possible. You know what I mean? Yes, catch up with people you care about. But that's still information in a way, isn't it? If I haven't seen my mum in a while, she's telling me about what she's been doing the last month. That's going to take a bit of time, isn't it? So, but it's still sharing information. But yeah, I went without a phone for about 3 years when I was in Australia, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I didn't miss it after a while. I apologise if you can hear that fucking dog barking in the background. By the way, I record this podcast in my spare room, so there will be some sort of extra noises in the background every now and then. But yeah, I went without a phone for 3 years, and it was good. I was in Australia. I got rid of my phone. I got rid of everything. I didn't have anything. I had a little backpack with some clothes in it, and that was it. And yeah, I lost my passport as well. I didn't even have that at one point, but that was a bad move. I lost it in a casino, and because they kicked me out. I lost my passport, and I was drunk, right, just up to no good. And in casinos, they've got strict rules. You've got to behave yourself in a casino. They just kick you out straight away. They don't give a fuck. They're just like out. That's it. But anyway, I lost my passport in the casino, and I was like, shit, I need to get back in. I need to look for my passport. I went up and I tried to reason with the bouncers. I was like, look, I need to find my passport. And they're like, come back tomorrow. And I was like, I wasn't taking no for an answer. So I tried to get in via the roof. I managed to climb up onto the roof. It's quite a big building. And you know those like vents that are like almost like James Bond type vents? They're quite big. You can fit a man in there. And I crawled into one of these vents on the roof. Got down. There's like a vertical section of this vent, probably about 8 or 9 foot high. Jumped down there, slipped down there, crawled along, and then I was just met with a bit of a dead end. It was like screwed. There's like a vent. There was like a grid that you couldn't get for. There was no getting any further. And I was like, shit, I have to abandon this course of action. And I tried to work my way back, but I was to my horror at the time, I was sort of stuck, because inside these vents, where it collects this like almost greasy type dirt that's on the edges of it, and it's quite slippery. So trying to crawl out of a 9-foot tube vertically is nigh on impossible. And I couldn't get out. I was like, shit, I can't get out. I really tried. And I was like, I'm stuck. I'm fucking stuck in a fucking vent on top of a casino. Great. What am I going to do? I was thinking, am I going to just have to bang as loud as I can on the vent until someone hears me and tries to get me out? Am I going to get in trouble? Can you get in trouble for trying? Are they going to try and do me for breaking into a casino? All these things are running through my head. But anyway, I managed to scramble out in the end. And the only way I can describe it is have you ever had a cat where you sort of put them in something small, like a tube, right, something like that? Or have you seen a video of a cat in a tube, right? And they panic, and they scramble, and they scratch their way out of wherever the fuck they're trapped in. That's sort of the reaction I had eventually. I panicked and scrambled, and I managed to scramble out, and I was well happy when I got out of there. But I was just covered in this like black dirt, this greasy sort of stuff. And I found my mate, and he looked at me. He was like, "Where the fuck have you been?" Because I was covered in this shit. I was like, told him the story. He's like, "Oh, you fucking idiot." But yeah, I got out of there, and luckily I got my passport back, which was the only thing that I had. But yeah, got on without my phone, and I've got a phone again. When I got my phone back, it's just annoying now. You know what I mean? It's just irritating more than anything. Just being contactable is irritating, because you can annoy someone by not picking up their call. So just by the act of doing nothing, you can piss someone off. Why is that a thing? They go, "Why didn't you pick up my call?" Oh, it's none of your business. Why haven't you opened my message? You know, why do I have to be on call 24/7? That's the real question. You know, the only calls I like getting are from scammers. When I get a call from a scammer, I like it, because I try and scam them back. I try and waste as much of their time as humanly possible. Sometimes I waste about 10, 15 minutes of their time, just leading them down the line, making them think that they're onto a winner. And then they're like, oh, wait, hold on. Can you call me back? Can you call me back in half an hour? I'll keep it going. I'll keep it going for days sometimes. But yeah, house phones. I think house phones were better. But they're a bit of a thing of the past now, aren't they? Landline. Nobody has a landline anymore. Landlines were good because if you miss someone's call, you can say, oh, I was out, sorry. You can't say I was out with a mobile phone, can you? And if you say, oh, I left my phone at home, they won't believe you. Who leaves their phone at home? Nobody. Nobody does that. So, yeah, it's just an irritating the fact that, you have to be constantly sort of on call, right, for your life. And if you don't answer someone's call or message, it's questionable. Go, why? You have to answer for yourself. But I think they should bring back faxing. I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember faxing. I think you have to be sort of my age or older. I think it was phasing out when I was about 15, 16. I remember my mum and dad had a fax machine. It was like a phone fax all in one. And what a fax machine is, if anyone doesn't know, is, as far as I can tell, I haven't researched into it. I'm just doing this on pure memory. Is you sort of like you write a note, a little letter or something to someone, or type one out if you've got a typewriter, and you feed it into your fax machine, and it spits out an exact sort of double of what you put in, where you want it to go. You type in a little telephone number. So if I wanted to send my mate a picture that I drew, right, I'd type in his number, put the bit of paper in, right, and then that bit of paper basically comes out and prints on his fax machine. So it's quite good, really, isn't it? I'll fax you. When do you want to meet? I'll fax you the details. If you fax someone, you don't expect a reply instantly, do you? Yeah, I'll send you a fax. So bring it back. I think you should bring it back. I think it was good. Bring it back. Anyway, that concludes my feature of In the Garden. And that concludes today's podcast. Thanks for listening. So I'm going to leave you today with a short poem from Managed Grape Bugfunkle. And here it is, and goodbye.
As the Nazis hunt for the gypsies' testes, they flee from Paris in their tank-top vesties. As the Romanies roam in their wood-wagon homes, they leave behind fiddles and broke-string banjos. But it's not just the gypsies, but the hillbillies know you can't cross the border with a name like Django.
Killed a bit of time, didn't it? You know what I mean? See you later.